The White House stated on March 1st of this year that this war was launched and was, quote, a military campaign to eliminate the imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime, end quote. That's a statement from the White House. Quote, the imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime. Was it the assessment of the intelligence community that there was a, quote, imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime, yes or no?
Senator, the only person who can determine what is and is not an imminent threat is the president.
False. This is the worldwide threats hearing where you present to Congress national intelligence, timely, objective, and independent of political considerations. You've stated today that the intelligence community's assessment is that Iran's nuclear enrichment program was obliterated and that, quote, there had been no efforts since then to try to rebuild their enrichment capability. Was it the intelligence community's assessment that nevertheless, despite this obliteration, there was a, quote, imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime? Yes or no?
It is not the intelligence community's responsibility to determine what is and is not an imminent threat.
Okay.
That is up to the president
here's the problem.
Based on a volume
no,
of
it is
precisely that he receives.
It is precisely your responsibility to determine what constitutes a threat to the United States. This is the worldwide threats hearing where, as you noted in your opening testimony, quote, you represent the IC's assessment of threats. You are here to represent the IC's assessment of threats. That's a quote from your own opening statement. And so my question is, as you're here to present the IC's assessment of threats, was it the assessment of the intelligence community that, as the White House claimed on March 1st, there was a, quote, imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime? Yes or no?
Once again, Senator, the intelligence community has...
You guys get the idea. Welcome to the Rescue Michigan Sunday night live stream where, you know, hey, Dennis, good to see you, buddy. We got Dennis Marburger on the show tonight, Republican State Committee member and general man about town. Good to have you back on the show, Dennis. Good to see you.
Thank you, Adam. It's good to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, and you know, I was just saying, we did this stream last week, and it was all about like how the war in Iran's getting out of control. Trump himself is going a little bit out of control, and oh my God, starting like from literally when we went off the air last Sunday, it has just been getting crazier and crazier and crazier, and we have so many things that Trump has posted on Truth Social. Statements he's given to the media that suggest the man is absolutely just going out of his mind. In fact, of all people, and I don't know if I had this particular clip handy, although I got a ton of clips for this week, but Lindsey Graham was on some interview where he says, I've never seen Trump so angry in my life. And yeah, things are not going quite well in the Middle East, I would say. And we've got well, a lot of stories to talk about. Of course, the big story this week is Joe Kent's resignation, and we will certainly get to that. But first, since one of the other big stories this week was Trump claiming 100% support for the Iran war, which he said was thanks to the brilliant reporting of CNN, we should point out that there was a new, this is the Real Clear Politics rolling average aggregate of Trump's approval rating, where they look at and they average out like all of these different approval polls. And you see there's tons of these here. So whether any one particular pollster is right or wrong is not the issue. The issue is that Trump's average of all the polls as of today hit a new low. And that was the second new low this week. The first one was minus 14.1 a few days ago, and now minus 14.4. This is mortifying. And oops, there's Dennis. And we have to realize, like, this is not going to bode well for Republicans. And you have to imagine the news is trickling up to Trump in some way, but I don't know.
Well, you would think his sense of self-preservation would kick in at some point, and he would be concerned about the midterms for the congressional and senatorial elections.
I would think. I would think. And you know, I understand Trump's in a bit of a bubble, and people are telling him, "Don't worry, Mr. President, everything's going great." But you have to imagine some of this stuff is getting through. And I think we do have to show a few instances of some buyer's remorse that we've seen over the past week. So here's just a few. These are just things I saw this week. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit on this one. Here's a guy on X says, I switched from libertarian to Republican because of Trump, fought Antifa all over the country. My podcast, getting good Republicans elected. All of it means nothing now. The level of betrayal I feel from Trump is devastating. He's done. MAGA's now a neocon up. And then you see in the comments too, he's getting flack from left-wing foreigners. Here's some guy in Holland. You were complicit in this mess. You were too kind of too racist. The guy's like, racist? I'm a mixed race. How dare you say these things, although he put it differently. There's one remark. Here's another one. Eric Brakey, who I believe was I don't know if he was the nominee. He was a candidate for Congress. I know that. Do you know, Dennis, was he the nominee? Did he win the primary? I don't know.
I don't recall. I know he was a delegate to Milwaukee because we met up there a couple of times and on the floor and some other things. And now Eric is in New Hampshire. So he was in Maine. And he's now in New Hampshire. He was a state legislator in Maine.
Oh, okay.
So that he had accomplished a couple of times, I think. And he's now, I think, the leader of the Free State Project in New Hampshire, if I recall correctly. But I know he's gone there and he's working for the cause of liberty in the Granite State of
cool.
Granite State. Yeah, okay.
Well, here's Eric Brakey. He says, I excused a lot of bad moves, but I gave my support because I told myself as long as he didn't start any new wars, he was in a different category than all the rest of the presidents in my lifetime. Now he's in the same category. So that was Eric Brakey. Okay, now this one. We just got to watch the clip. This is amazing. Here we go.
If you could say something from, let's take a listen to one more woman who we spoke with. If you could say something to President Trump and he was going to hear you right now, what would it be?
You are a worthless pile of
And you voted for him how many times?
3 times. That was my bad. Apparently, I'm an idiot.
Trump.
Man. Now, I got to tell you, first of all, I don't feel sorry for voting for Trump. I still don't, no matter what people say. But you got to admire the woman's candor. So,
right.
There's that.
Right. I just, and if I could just interject this one thing here.
Yeah.
About that. So there was a coalition that came together. And sometimes I think people lose sight of this. We're looking at it from strictly the political standpoint, right? There are the principles we want to stand up for, and then we talk about getting people elected and how do we do that. And there was a coalition that was put together, so it included libertarians, people who are philosophically libertarian, and it included people, some of whom were independents, of course. It included people from demographic groups that
a lot of union guys, a lot of Democrats, a lot of union workers.
Right.
Yeah.
In fact, back in 2016, when what Trump would say sounded a lot different than what he says now. He got quite a few votes from families in the swing states and communities in the swing states where the statistical loss of life and people being maimed, from their areas was significantly higher than in other places, and they switched from Democratic Party on the presidential side to Republican Party. And there were some statisticians that went through and looked at this, and they did a study. One was at Brown University, one was at the University of Minnesota, and this was a fairly big news item after the 2016 election. It's faded since then, and Glenn Greenwald wrote about it, and some others have too. And they said they also did test. They say, I remember them saying this. They had also tested to see if there could have been something else that had these people move. Oh, was it tariff policy or something else? And they were convinced from their statistical analysis that it was over the issue of war and peace, because Hillary Clinton was much more hawkish, right, in that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Trump had made a big deal out of saying not only was he's not going to follow those policies, the Bush and Clinton policies, but he excoriated them over there. He excoriated Jeb Bush, and Clinton, right? And so that was a huge part of it. And I do believe that his reversals on that topic, and along with some others, have played a big impact in his political fortunes now, and the way this polling is showing up.
Yeah. Well, we've got more. I've got plenty more of these buyer's remorse clips, but you know what? I think before we'll come back to that. But first, I want to go through just a sample of some of the things that Trump has been posting just since last week. So this one, I don't even think I need to zoom in on this. Just look at this. This is Trump's post on Truth Social, and it's like a wall of text. It's just he's just fuming. Like I said, hard coping. This was last Sunday. Iran has long been known as a master of media manipulation and public relations. Oh yeah, Iran compared to Donald Trump and the United States of America. They're the big media experts. And this just goes on and on and on, ranting late night like morons. I won in a landslide, AI, corrupt media, blah, 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 blah. And then he follows that beauty up with this one. And it's another gigantic wall of text. Tariffs, the court's corrupt. The Supreme Court's so bad. It's the court's fault. Everything is going badly. And then, again, this is last Sunday, March 16th. And this one's longer than any of them. No, it was the same. Is this the same one? Is this the same one again? The court treat Republicans so unfairly. Hold on. There's so many more of these. Here's another one. Oh, this is I'm sorry. This is the same one again. Never mind. That's another one. Here we've got a clip of Trump. Actually, that's the article. But here's the video. This is Trump threatening treason against a reporter for asking a question. He doesn't like the question. Here we go. Maybe that wasn't the right clip. Sorry. Did not do a good job with my clip organizing tonight. Where did my clip about okay, Mark Levin, that was another one. Let's go to that one. Here's another long post about Mark Levin, who some of you may remember. Dennis, you probably remember this. Mark Levin was a never Trumper. He was totally opposed to Trump in 2016 and in 2024. And he writes this long post about how great Mark Levin is. And here, they are not MAGA. I am. And MAGA includes not allowing Iran, blah, 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 blah. And as some people have pointed out, this is clearly a reaction to this feud that Mark Levin and Megyn Kelly have been having on the internet. So here is, for example, well, here's Megyn Kelly herself. Micro penis Mark Levin is such a small man to go beg the president for a pat in the head to make himself feel better about, well, you know. After one mean tweet about him following his 111 nasty, nonstop personal misogynistic attacks on me, Fox has an obsessed harasser on his hands. So apparently Trump is white knighting for Mark Levin against Megyn Kelly. And as this guy points out, yeah, Mark Levin was totally against Trump. Somebody forgets those things. It's bizarre.
Well, right. Mark Levin, Lindsey Graham, I believe Ben Shapiro, many, right? So the never Trumpers have been embraced by Trump. And the people that defended him the most when the chips were really down for him during the Russiagate hoax, Rand Paul and Tom Massey, who also, by the way, and Marjorie Taylor Greene is, I think, another one that you could count in that. And those people who have also been the most forthright in defending what many people thought was the ideas that he was proposing, at least in some areas, like with cutting spending back and not having the foreign wars and all that sort of thing. He viciously attacks them in much more than he goes after any Democrats, and he attacks them in ways that are utterly amazing in terms of their how negative it is in terms of, just horrible language that he uses and bringing up stuff that, why would anybody even say this, and bringing up about Massey's marriage and that sort of thing, and then he says, well, Massey doesn't know the process and he's lazy. Well, Massey knows the process better than almost anyone there, certainly better than Trump, and you can't call the guy lazy. This is idiocy. And then his attack on Tom Massey's wife, I mean, that was why he would even bring that up in the first place. And he lied about her. And she was a
Yeah,
three-time.
he went after Joe Kent's wife this week too. I noticed.
Yeah. So, yeah.
We'll get to talking about Joe Kent too.
Right. And Mark, by the way, and Mark Levin has dishonored himself on a continual basis.
Yeah.
When issues. And so the fact that he would even stand up for that guy, what are you doing? And that was a guy that was the never Trumper. So when it's
well,
just sensible, except that it seems to happen over and over again.
Yeah, I don't normally quote Raheem, but he points out what almost certainly happened was Levin called Trump, Mr. Trump, Megyn Kelly's making fun of me. She said I had a micro penis, and now I need you to defend me on the internet. And that's what Trump ended up doing, is defending Mark Levin as a war in Iran is raging. Which, speaking of that war, here was Trump again. This is like still only like Monday, and he says, I didn't have an obligation. I had an obligation to do this. I didn't want to. He's and you guys don't need to see the video of this because you can just picture Trump saying this. I call it an excursion. He said that several times this week. I didn't want to make this journey, but I had to. I had to save the world from the evil Iranian terrorists. Sure.
Well, I mean, this is outrageous. He says he had an obligation. Yeah, he has an obligation. He took the oath of office, and he had an obligation as his predecessors have had, and just like his predecessors, he's failed that obligation. The oath of office says he's going to enforce the Constitution, uphold the Constitution. And it's clear the constitutional law is that Congress declares war. Unless there's an ongoing attack on the United States, in this country, you can't be involved in these things. So only defensive actions to defend the Americans and the United States here at home, not going all around the world. And as far as terrorism, I know you're going to get into that, but if you look at some of these things that have been done recently, and even before recently, there's been a lot of terrorism coming out from these politicians, the Lindsey Grahams and the other, and from Trump, and so it's outrageous.
Yeah. Here's another one. I just play this clip and let you guys walk into this one cold if you haven't seen this before. Here we go. This is at the White House.
We had one man who was very ill. It looked like he wasn't going to make it. I don't know. I won't mention his name. Should I? Do other people know his name? Do you want to mention it? He'll be proud. Go ahead. Tell him the story.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. President. Congressman Neil Dunn of Florida had some real health challenges, and it was very serious, and had a pretty grim diagnosis. And I mentioned it to the president. I said, Congressman Dunn is a real champion and a patriot because he's still coming to work. And if others got this diagnosis, they would be apt to go home and retire. And
what was the diagnosis?
It was, I think it was a terminal diagnosis.
He would be dead by June.
Okay, that wasn't public, but yeah, okay. That's it was grim.
We had one man who was.
Yeah, he would be dead by June. Trump announces, revealing the diagnosis, and then it's actually cut from that clip. He said he helped him get medical care because he needed his vote. I mean, just incredible.
So much for HIPAA and other things too, eh?
Yeah. Here, I got another one for you. This is a great.
Taking Cuba. I do believe I'll be having the honor of taking Cuba.
Taking Cuba.
Taking Cuba in some form, yeah.
Steve,
taking Cuba.
hearing.
Whether I free it, take it, I think I could do anything I want with it. You want to know the truth?
I think I can do anything I want with this sovereign country.
Okay. So Adam, let me. Okay, I want to interject here about that.
Please do.
Cuba and Iran, these other things. So there was a fellow in 1803, and I know some people watch this will say, 1803, what's that got to do with today? But these men and women in Washington that serve in the government take the oath of office, all right? They put their hands in the Bible. Well, most of them do. Apparently, Trump didn't the last time. There's these pictures of him with his hands at his side. And, the first lady's holding the Bible. He didn't put his hand on that. But, of course, when they had the debates for ratification, the anti-ratifying group was very strong. And that included people like Patrick Henry, who said that if they do something to violate this new compact between the states, there are no criminal penalties here. And what are we going to, this is going to be terrible. So the pro-ratification sites said, there are all sorts of different ways. Madison and Alexander Hamilton, of all people, when you studied how ironic that was. But they wrote about in the Federalist Papers, this is how you can fight back against usurpation of power and federal tyranny. After it was ratified, through an arduous process. And not all 13 states ratified at the same time. There were two that followed at the end, Rhode Island and North Carolina. They were known as the Wayward Sisters before they finally ratified. But St. George Tucker in 1803 wrote the first systematic analysis of the Constitution. And he said that taking undelegated authority that was not specifically delegated by the states to their creation, the states are the parents. The federal, what we call federal, as you know, they called it the general government back then. That was the child, or the employee, if you want to put it that way. Okay, so if you do something that's not delegated, he said that's a usurpation of power, and a usurpation is a treason against the sovereignty of the people. And that we're supposed to have an elected despotism. Jefferson talked about that. So when you consider all this, it shows how bad things are that we've gotten to this point that a man could feel comfortable in saying that I can do whatever I want, not lawfully, sir, but there's plenty of precedent to say that there is no consequence for politicians, whether they're in the legislative branch or in the executive branch, for violating the supreme law of the land. And Trump is taking it, certainly he's taking it to even newer heights or newer lows or something like that. But this is, I guess he ripped the mask off. But
and well, I think also it's a sign of extreme insecurity. I mean, it reminds me a lot about Gretchen Whitmer. I'm going to lock down this state because I need to prove that I have that I can prove that, not just that I have the power, although that's a big part of it, but also that I can make these bold decisions. I can conquer Venezuela and Iran and so on. Again, we'll talk more about Iran here, but I also wanted to play this clip. This is another thing Trump let slip this week. Here we go.
Middle Eastern countries there, Israel there. So we did it for a lot of reasons, but zero. We don't need oil. We have all the oil we need for ourselves. It's one of the great assets that we have. We have more than double what anybody else in terms of oil production. We're at more than double any other country. So we don't need it, but we did it. It's almost, you could say we did it out of habit, which is not a good thing to do. But we did it because we have some good allies there. We have some great Middle Eastern countries there.
Yeah, we did it out of habit, which I guess you could say is a bad thing. It might be a bad thing to habitually bomb a country and murder innocent people, carry out a sneak attack, that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's not a good habit to be in. What are we doing here?
Right. Well, it is terrible. Because now this brings back to mind, we just celebrated the anniversary of George Washington's birthday. And I know you're familiar with his farewell address. And he had three principles he really hammered there. One was don't get involved in political parties because political party passions will put the political party ahead of the country, and that'll be bad. Second one was don't make changes in the governing structure outside of the amendment process. Okay, so we violated both.
I mean, I think that's been a problem too. Honestly, the 17th Amendment's been a source of big problems.
Right.
Which for those who haven't memorized, that's the direct election of U.S. senators instead of having the states send their U.S. senators.
Right. But Washington's point was, in other words, don't just do things through edict or legislation to change the structure. That's got to be done through amendment and other changes too. But of course, it gets back to the usurpation of power idea. It wasn't delegated, but we don't wait for amendments. There was no time for that. And the third thing, of course, famously was not to be involved in entangling permanent foreign alliances. And he had a whole list of reasons why it would be bad if that were to happen, and it has happened. And President Trump just explained again why that's bad because of all these other countries, and those aren't reasons to be doing that. And for him to go ahead and initiate the actions that he's initiated, as have many of his predecessors, and it's a bipartisan problem. There's no question about that. But this is wrong, and unfortunately, the American people have appeased this evil doing and this law breaking at the highest levels for many decades.
Yep. It turns out I do actually have that comment from Lindsey Graham, Lady Lindsey. I did find that. Just spoke to POTUS about our European allies' unwillingness to provide assets to keep the Strait of Hormuz functioning, which benefits Europe far more than America. I've never heard him so angry in my life. I share that anger given what's at stake. So obviously, I mean, first of all, they keep going every which way on the Strait of Hormuz. oh, we need to defend it. Who cares about the Strait of Hormuz? We don't need to defend it. It's all for Europe. We don't need a Strait of Hormuz. What's the Strait of Hormuz? We're sending Marines to the Strait of Hormuz. It just goes, they're just whipsawing every which way. But I think the big takeaway is when Lindsay says, I've never seen Trump so angry in my life. I mean, that's what it really boils down to. This whole thing about we're doing this for the Europeans. Yeah, right.
Well, yeah, and again, it's mind-bogglingly both stupid and also evil and lawless. I mean, it makes no sense at all. And by the way, the Strait of Hormuz was open and things were going fine until this war was started.
Yeah, exactly. So one thing Trump keeps saying, because obviously they have not been able to get the Strait of Hormuz open, is the reason why is because we don't need it, because it's all for the Europeans and the Asians that the Strait of Hormuz is open, and that's why they should be the ones to reopen it. And these people are like, but you're the reason why it's closed, not us. You're the one that started this war,
right? Well, and it's not totally closed, is it?
No. Iran has established a nice business for themselves, charging people apparently in Chinese yuan to cross the strait, something like $2 million worth of foreign currency. So
right, and so the other point would be that it looks like the Iranians now are saying they're going to try to drive as hard a bargain as they can for several reasons. One of which they say they've been subjected to attacks over a very long period of time. The negotiations were going on here, and their negotiators were killed. And there's been a pattern of this, right? The negotiators get killed. The leaders of the government that is being negotiated with get killed, and there's attacks on Tehran. They're bombing all these residential neighborhoods, and of course the bombing of the school with the children, the girls' school, but also there was a boys' school there too. And there's a picture, many people have seen it. It's a heartbreaking picture of the young third grader, Mikhail. I don't remember his last name, but he's waving to his mom. That's the last time she saw him, and apparently he died in that raid. But the ramifications from the situation over there. Yes, oil and gas, but it goes a lot farther than just what we normally think about, like paying for gas to drive your car or for jet fuel for planes. But there are a lot of ramifications here for fertilizers and other chemicals and things of that nature. And so the world food supply evidently is at great risk.
Because fertilizer comes through the strait. Yeah, that's going to be a huge problem. The knock-on effects of this on the global economy are going to be absolutely disastrous. And what we're seeing now is only just the very tip of the iceberg.
Adam, when we hear about this, it makes me think again. I mean, being involved in the Republican Party, I know how many people will react to what we're saying here. But I would say if we had stuck with what at times were considered good Republican Party principles and just good principles in general, enunciated by great Republicans like Ron Paul and previously Robert Taft, and I know there are other ones as well that we could talk about. Senator Vandenberg for Michigan, at least in the earlier part of his career, then we wouldn't have some of these problems. But unfortunately, we talked off air before about reference to Murray Rothbard's book about the betrayal of the American right, and we can see how the betrayal of the American right has continued. And a big part of that is what happens as people get their minds poisoned by Fox News and all the propaganda. And we've moved away from what were considered good, solid right-wing principles of fiscal sanity, trying to keep the government as small as possible, sort of a Jeffersonian type of an approach. And now it seems that the people are presented with a very unpalatable choice of two rotten sandwiches from the two so-called major parties. And
that's one way to put it. Yeah.
Right. And this has major implications. And that's why some people say, can we even vote our way out of this? And let's just look at the financial part of things right now, crossing the 39.
I'm increasingly coming to the conclusion we can't. I mean, this is going to take years to unravel. 2026, we're cooked. 2028 is currently in jeopardy. We're looking at least 4 years of Republicans being in the pasture. And what Democrats will do in the meantime is absolutely terrifying. But what are you going to do? I mean, and Republicans being silent on this is not going to be a wise course of action. I mean, here is, just to give you a few more of these. Here's Elijah Schaffer. Thank you, Trump, for letting me into your home for parties for the last few years. Thank you for inviting me to attend the announcement of your 2024 campaign at your home. Thank you for dropping my January 6th wiretapping investigation. But the Iran war is a line too far. I'm done with MAGA. And there he is at Mar-a-Lago.
Right. And I just want to say we should specify and stipulate there have been some things that Trump has done that we would say were good things, but they're getting overwhelmed by the bad things, foreign policy wise, surveillance state wise, the massive spending thing. So it's not like it's 100% all negative, but the problem is that these bad things are such an overwhelming consequence, and none of them should happen. And we can go over some of these other things as well later if you'd like. But
I mean, people are furious. Here's one. My family fought in every war since the Revolutionary War. My family's relationship with the U.S. military is over 250 years. We'll never sacrifice our blood and treasure for the military-industrial complex, the bankers, the Epstein class, and Israel. Here's another one. I've had this post pinned in my profile since early November 2024. Here's my daughter and me voting for Trump. My belief, despite having doubts in the democratic process, my belief in a movement and the person I felt I would fight for real change. I recently unpinned it given what I'm experiencing. Feelings of betrayal, confusion, anger, gullibility. And instead of fellow patriots understanding these very real feelings many are experiencing, we're met with insults, doomer, panican, libtard, completely unwarranted and childish as fuck. I'll say it again, it takes a hell of a lot more courage to go against the grain than to be a simp for it. RIP to the America I longed for and tried to believe in. This person's probably never going to vote again.
And we talk about, I think some
Look at this guy. I voted for Trump and got completely betrayed. I wanted no wars, gut spending, release Epstein files, undo mass migration. I got the exact opposite. We'll be voting Democrat in November to block this admin. And these just go on. Milo, I was there when the president came down to the golden elevator. He meant escalator. I campaigned for him for years, but I'm faithful to the mission, not the man. Trump has lost his way. That's the exact right. It's time to reorganize. It's already beginning. The mission, not the man.
Well, and if we're talking about, again, hearkening back to the American Revolutionary Patriots in the early days of American governance on this continent, this is a theme that was pronounced. Many times it came up with, are you going to follow just an individual, no matter what they do, or stick with what is right and doing the right thing? And of course, it came up during the ratification debates. There was a man named Abraham White, I think was his name. He was arguing against ratification. And people saying, well, we'll have trustworthy people. He said, I wouldn't trust a flock of Moses. And so this whole idea that we're supposed to trust government or trust the man in charge, or come on now, don't turn away from him. When that person turns away from their oath of office, when they turn away from promoting the cause of liberty, then we have to take a stand against that. This isn't about one person, except when that one person or group of people, there's just a few people that don't do that. But whether it's President Trump or President Otto Penn Biden or Obama or Clinton or the Bushes, the people should not be sitting by quietly and say, well, let's see, what's that person's political marketing label? Well, I'm going to use that to determine what I'm going to do. That is wrong, and that's destroying all of us.
Yeah. Yeah, I put a few more things on the screen. And yeah, here's Trump. Here we go.
To the Middle East. Are you concerned that a move like that could potentially change the unity?
Well, I don't know. I seem to have great support because CNN came out with a poll today that I'm at 100%. And they said they've never seen a poll like that. The CNN poll said I'm at 100%.
So this person on X has a great explanation. These polls are being rigged to place the blame on Republicans. So Trump keeps saying, all the Republicans support me. Like, why do you guys think CNN is promoting this garbage? You think CNN has Trump's interest in mind? You think the CNN supports the Republican Party? They're doing all this because now Trump keeps saying, all the Republicans support me. All the Republicans support the war. Every Republican supports the war. And they're going to keep repeating this mantra over and over again so that voters at the polls are going to go, gee, what's on the ballot again? Oh, yeah, the Republicans who blindly follow Trump and support the war that's caused the gas prices to be $8 a gallon by now. That's what this game is. And Trump is just falling for it.
Yeah, well, it's bad news for the Republican Party. It's bad news for America and for all Americans.
Yeah. Anyway, you were saying something about good things Trump has done. I don't know. You can tell me what they are.
Let's see. Did he get us out of the World Health Organization? I thought there were a few things.
Oh, okay. All right. Maybe there was that, I suppose.
Yeah.
I don't know. I heard he got us out of the National Endowment for Democracy, but then he's funding it again. So who knows?
Right. That's a great point. I mean, you have to look at, like, they were going to get rid of the Department of Education, and we say, hey, that's great. Back during the Ron Paul campaigns, we talked about that. That's great. And then now apparently that's not happening. Or some of the functions that were taking place get moved to other places, and the funding, it keeps going up. So that didn't really happen. But I think there are some other areas too, for instance, where there are some moves being made by the administration to lessen the burden, the unnecessary burdens, not ones that would be helpful in any way, but unnecessary burdens on people trying to extract minerals that are necessary and that sort of thing, and in the petroleum area too. So I think there are some of these things where they are probably doing some things that are needed, reasonable, and decent. But there are so many things that they're doing that are terrible. And by the way, I just mentioned, because our friends at the 10th Amendment Center, Michael Bolden and his group that does such great work, point out, look at gun control, look at the violations of the Second Amendment. And of course, we don't get our gun rights. We don't get any of our rights from government. We have our rights because we're human beings. And the Bill of Rights says that persons have these rights, and they attempt to prescribe or to stop the feds from violating or infringing on those rights. Well, the administration, the first Trump administration, set the record for the most gun control actions, which means the most violation of the Second Amendment and the most violations of the natural right to own private property, firearms, for your self-defense and for your protection. And of course, Biden was bad on that too, but he wasn't as bad as Trump. And apparently, the levels are going up here highly again. And let's not forget that we just had some, situations that came up that were very public, where you had American Trump administration officials saying, "Oh, you're not supposed to be armed, if there's a protest going on or something like that." And that's well, the feds are not supposed to have anything to say about that. And the people, and you read about the history of the American Revolution, efforts at gun control were a big part, along with the of the impetus for that revolution, which was really a revolution in the change in the thoughts and the attitudes of the American people that were here at that time. And so British attempts to restrict or confiscate their firearms was a big incentive towards the revolution, as was the whole idea of arbitrary government. And boy, talk about arbitrary government, we're getting it in spades right now.
Yeah. Here's one thing that Trump's been really putting a lot of his political muscle behind, perhaps at his own peril, which is the SAVE Act. Here's yet another one of Trump's posts from this week. And this is a pattern. He says, he says, most important and consequential piece of legislation, excuse me, in the history of Congress and America itself. No more rigged elections. Okay, now, here's the thing. Okay, the SAVE Act, correct me if I'm wrong, the SAVE Act is requiring ID and citizenship to vote. However, Trump keeps throwing in these things. He says, first, no rigged mail-in voting. We're the only country in the world that allows this. Okay, is that actually in the SAVE Act? I don't think it is. And I know for dang sure that no men and women's sports and no transgender mutilization of children is in the bill either. And this is at least the third time Trump has posted on the SAVE Act, and then in the same sentence says no mail-in voting, proof of citizenship, and then he rattles off no men and women's sports and no transgender twice at least now. He said mutilization, which is not, I mean, it makes you wonder, does he think this is actually in this bill? let alone this is going to get passed, which it won't.
Well, Adam, and did he have one of these posts where he said no gender change surgery without parental consent?
Yes, and then it got changed very suddenly. That was, I think we covered that a week or so ago. Yeah, he did do that. He posted that, and then I think they blamed an intern. He said, "Oh, he didn't mean that. He meant no transgender surgery for minors. Period." So yeah, they walked that one back very, very quickly. Yeah, we got another. Here's a short one from Trump. A nice short one. Statehood, talking about Venezuela. Yeah, you guys want Venezuela to be the 51st state? Like, these aren't things that he should be casually throwing around. And here's a nice comment from Russians with Attitude. Says, I distinctly remember being thoroughly entertained by Trump's tweets back in 2016. They were funny, thousands of furious comments under each one. It was a riot. 10 years later, it's incoherent walls of text or random words in all caps. The fall of a talented content farmer. Sad.
Well, now 51st state brings back memories of about Canada, right? And the people said, well, wait a minute. If we brought it, they were the 51st state, it leans left, right? I mean, is that really what you want? I mean, I don't think we want that. And next, we don't.
No. Canada should be a territory. Same with Greenland and all the others. But so why is Trump posting statehood then?
Yeah, right. But a couple of things. Yeah, why that's no good. But here's a big part of it. Talk about statehood. We need for the people of the states to start doing their duty, and for the state governments to be resisting the feds whenever the feds are doing usurpations of power, and that's known as state nullification. And during the ratification debates, Madison and the others talked about this. They told the anti-ratifying group, "Don't worry, there's the means of opposition to federal usurpation are numerous and at hand." And he talked about non-cooperation with officers of the union. Now people's heads are exploding if they hear that. Well, what libtard said that? Was James Madison said that, you see? And so there's so much of this, so much of our heritage has been lost, and so much of the system has changed, not through amendment, but through usurpation and through appeasement. And one of the things they were worried about was as time went on, people would forget what was really going on and what was really agreed to. And then because of political party passions, one group would say it's okay as long as a guy from our group is in charge. And the other group, oh, it's okay when a guy from our group is in charge. And behind the scenes, as some people say, they actually work, most of the time they're actually working together. And that probably explains why if you're an outlier who says, hey, let's do what we took an oath to do. We put our hands in the Bible and we said we were going to defend the Constitution, and you're in Washington, D.C. So if you're a Thomas Massey, that's why you get all the stuff, the horrible things said about you and everything. You're the person that's attacked the most. And then the crooks seem to get away with this stuff, and they get pardons and they get wealthy and they gain more power. And this is bad news for all of the American people. But maybe people are waking up to this, and hopefully at some point we'll realize that, again, when Madison listed out his things that he thought we should do to fight back against a government that was too big, voting was way down the list. It wasn't off the list, but it's like Jefferson said, you use voting in the democratic process of voting only if you're going to be thinking of changing officials because maybe they didn't administer the program quite as well as they should have. But if it's not a constitutional program, it doesn't matter how well it's administered. And for that's when you use the rightful remedy, state nullification. And I know you and I've talked about way in the past. I remember you brought up about Madison and talked about interposition. You even talked about that. We've gotten so far away from the principles of the American Revolution, which allegedly we're celebrating here 250 years after the signing of the Declaration. And of course, the revolution probably started back in 1761, right? With James Otis Jr.
And by the actual, was it sesquicentennial, something like that? By the time it actually rolls around, all anyone will be talking about is this escapade in the Middle East. Like so much for this, so much for Washington's advice about foreign entanglements.
Right. So the government here has become more intrusive. The long train of abuses is worse now than it was in 1776 when Jefferson and the rest of the committee wrote the Declaration. Yeah.
All right, I got another Trump one for you. Now this one is, I mean, it's also full of rage, but also, substance might be a stretch. But here's what Trump posted. And again, it's funny because if you understand you're reading a pathological liar, you can almost just infer exactly what really happened here. So he says, Israel, out of anger for what has taken place in the Middle East. So look at the passive voice there. Oh, just what has taken place in the Middle East. The surprise attack that Israel and the United States launched against Iran on the 28th of February has violently lashed out at a major facility known as the South Pars gas field in Iran. A relatively small section of the whole has been hit. Satellite photos have proved this is a complete lie. They really hit it hard, actually, Israelis did. And then he says, the United States knew nothing about this particular attack, and the country of Qatar was in no way, shape, or form involved with it. Nor did it have any idea it was going to happen. Now, they've already said, the U.S. knew Israel was going to do this, and they said, go ahead, because Trump is looking for leverage, and they thought, let's try attacking their gas fields. We'll see what they do. When Iran did was struck back hard, and they hit Qatar, they hit Israel, they hit a bunch of places. So here's what Trump said. Unfortunately, Iran did not know this or any of the pertinent facts pertaining to the South Pars attack, and unjustifiably and unfairly. I mean, first of all, why would that be unfair and unjust? If they didn't know, wouldn't they be able to safely assume that we were in on it? Because they've been in in Qatar, for that matter, they've been in the whole thing this whole time. That we have our military base in Qatar. Anyway, they attacked a portion of Qatar's LNG gas facility. No more attacks will be made by Israel. And by the way, Netanyahu played along. He said, the Americans, they had nothing to do with it. It was all us. Yeah, right. But anyway, no more attacks will be made pertaining to this extremely important and valuable South Pars field unless Iran unwisely decides to attack a very innocent, in this case, Qatar, in which instance the United States, with or without the help or consent of Israel, will massively blow up the entirety of the South Pars gas fields at a strength and power that Iran has never seen or witnessed before. Every single attack Trump has ever done on Iran is the biggest attack in the history of the human race. It's kind of pathetic, actually.
Well, each attack that he's taking credit for is a criminal act on his part. There's never been a declaration of war. So this is and by the way, Qatar, or what are they saying about Qatar? Did they run that by Mark Levin?
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because the neocons who are all, Israel firsters, well, they hate the entire Middle East, But Trump himself loves the Middle East, just not Iran. He loves the Saudis and the Qataris and all the rest of them. I mean, because they're at least as bad as Jeffrey Epstein. The Saudis are, the Qataris, all those sheiks. It's funny for all the people that, badmouth Iran, like the Saudi royal families, all these ruling royal families that their people hate. Like no one in Bahrain supports the Bahrainian king or the king of Jordan. These people aren't popular. They're all hated.
Right.
They're all complete phonies.
Right. And somebody pointed out, they said this keeps up. We could. Well, they were talking about regime change in Iran, and of course, what happened? Of course, naturally, the Iranian people rally around the regime. I mean, that's what's going to happen in a situation like this. And you see the devastation that they're wreaking on the people of Tehran. They also bombed Esfahan, and apparently there's a lot of great culture and historical things in Iran that have been bombed and or damaged. The residential things that are being hit. But then the Iranians have been planning for this for a long time, and they apparently knew what was likely to happen or sorts of things. So they apparently decentralized. They understood the leadership that they would be targets. And then what they did was they set it up so they could strike back, and they hit Bahrain. And apparently the people of Bahrain, and I've read about this before, that they're not happy. They're majority Shia. And the government in Bahrain is Sunni, and so somebody said, well, it looks like we might get regime change in Bahrain, which is not something that they were aiming for. In fact, it isn't the U.S. Fifth Fleet based in Bahrain. So this is having all sorts of consequences that apparently weren't thought of or weren't considered or dismissed as not being important. But this whole situation could produce results that are much different than what was anticipated by the people in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere.
Yep. Here's another one. This is from 2 days ago. Without the USA, NATO is a paper tiger. They didn't want to join the fight to stop a nuclear-powered Iran. No, now that's actually, there's some deception in here. He's conflating nuclear energy and nuclear weapons. Now the fight is militarily won. Well, then why are we sending Marines out there? Huh? With very little danger for them. They complain about the high oil prices that they are forced to pay, but don't want to help because they had nothing to, it wasn't their fault this happened, but don't want to help open the Strait of Hormuz. A simple military maneuver is the single reason for the high oil. And they've all said, if the mighty U.S. Navy won't reopen the Strait, what chance do we have? We have no Navy, most of them. So easy for them to do, so little risk. Cowards, we remember. And Daniel Davis, who is, I think, a lieutenant colonel is his rank. This is a great observation. These kinds of posts by the president give literal aid and comfort to our enemies. Iran knows only too well that the U.S. has not won this war, and they see Trump flailing in the wind, trying to shame our NATO allies into submitting to a military op that cannot succeed, gives encouragement to Iran to stay the course, confirming that their strategy of dragging the war out, keeping the straits closed, and the price of oil high is working. There's also a dangerous signal to our allies, no doubt making the question seriously whether the leader of the West's biggest military and economic power is in full control of his mental faculties. That's not an insulting statement. It is a sobering, legitimate question. And on that note, we have to watch this clip from, with the Prime Minister of Japan. Here we go. Listen to this.
But one question, why didn't you tell U.S. allies in Europe and Asia like Japan about the war before attacking Iran? So we are very confused about we Japanese citizens.
Well, one thing, you don't want to signal too much. When we go in, we went in very hard, and we didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay?
Look on her
Why didn't
face.
you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay.
good friend. But
Oh my God. Yeah. Pearl Harbor. Why didn't you tell your allies you're about to start a war? Like that. Well, Japan didn't tell anybody when they attacked Pearl Harbor, did they? Which, my God. I mean, besides being a very sore point for Japan, like, didn't we remember Pearl Harbor as like the day that shall live in infamy? The day the evil, dishonorable, dirty, rotten Japanese scum carried out a surprise attack on U.S. Marines at Pearl Harbor and slaughtered them. Like, I used to work for Gary Glenn, whose father survived the Pearl Harbor attack, and that's what their memory of it was like, this was the most dreadful, deceitful, disgraceful thing any military could ever do, to carry out a surprise attack like that. And that's what Trump is comparing his own launching of the war in Iran with. It's just mind-boggling.
Right, and you wonder why would he use that as our standard?
Yeah.
You get a declaration of war. I mean, and this is what happened, including with the Barbary Pirates, by the way. So for those, if anybody's listening, say, "Oh, but Jefferson just did things to fight the Barbary Pirates." Like, no, he went to Congress and he said, "Here are the facts as we can best determine them. This is what I want to do, but you guys, it's up to you. You determine what should be done." And actually, and before that, in the Washington administration, actually, even on the North American continent, there were problems as the country was moving west. At one point, there was fighting with Native American Indian tribes, and so the governors of the states would write to Washington, "Well, what can we do? What should we do?" And he says, "Well, you can repel attacks, and that sort of thing, but you don't pursue and don't launch offensive operations unless we get a clear direction from Congress, like a declaration of war situation." And that was such a huge part. And Madison said was maybe the most important part of the entire Constitution. And he said, because war is the father of armies and debts and taxes, and it's during wars that we lose our freedom, we lose our liberty, because the war is used as an excuse to do that. And of course, we've seen that happen all the time. I mean, they keep saying, "Well, we're fighting the wars, and we have the troops fight for our freedom, but we keep losing more and more freedom." And as Robert Higgs said, when you see the amount of government intrusion into our lives, it goes up every time there's a war, and it never goes back to where it was before the war. It's always, at best, partially. So there's this ratchet effect, you see, and that sort of thing. So there are very real consequences to the lawlessness that's running amok. And then you think too, let's not forget what happened with Iraq when there was the attack on they bombed that restaurant in Baghdad. Remember, Bush did that. They were going to launch the attack, and they thought they could decapitate the Iraqi regime by killing Saddam Hussein. The story I read was apparently they had sent one of the body doubles, and this guy, I don't know if he knew he was going to die or not, but they sent him to this restaurant, and they let just a few people know. I mean, Saddam's people, and they were able to figure out who it was. I guess that had tipped off the Americans, but Bush bombed this restaurant, killed a whole lot of people doing it. And he killed one of the body doubles of Saddam Hussein. So, but this is going on for a very long time. And by the way, it's another great reason. And you mentioned Gary Glenn, and of course, our friend Dan McKnight. I know you've met Dan McKnight, you've interviewed him, and you've heard him speak.
Yes.
Bring our troops home, U.S., and defend the guard. This is why this is so important. And Dan's a man, as with Joe Kenton, we're going to talk about later. Nobody can question or denigrate Dan's bona fides on this. He's been out in the field. Out in Afghanistan, he's fought in these combat operations, and he leads this great movement to bring our troops home and for defend the guard, and to say that you're not using our National Guard people until and unless there's a congressional declaration of war. Other than that, they're staying at home. Some people think even if there's that, they should still be staying at home. But at least in this case, you're not sending them, Mr. President, you're not sending our National Guard people overseas into a foreign combat zone unless you get that congressional declaration of war. And if we don't have it, then the legislature and the governor of the state should say, we're not sending them. Not that. These people in Washington, if they can't be bothered to do their jobs, if they can't be bothered to follow the law that they took an oath to do, then there's no reason that any American should be put in harm's way for this. And when you consider the terrible costs that's been suffered by American military personnel and their families, as well as the people overseas, it's any person that calls themselves a Christian or a caring person, if they were to look at what's transpired because of this, this is horrible. What they've done to people of many religions and of many nationalities, and including, coincidentally, has had terrible effects for the Christian communities of the Middle East and West Asia, but has also led to huge amounts of human suffering. And Jefferson famously said, when he contemplates there's a just God, he trembles for America.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so I think it's beholden on everyone that would see this or hear this to study these things. And once you know, you can't unknow. And if you are, for people of conscience, it's time for us to stop appeasing the organized crime ring in Washington, D.C.
Amen. All right, I got another gem from Trump here. This is from 2 days ago. And he's got new explanations for why we made war with Iran. Now, you remember in the cold open clip, we had Tulsi Gabbard citing the White House on March 1st, saying Iran was this close to building a nuclear weapon. And yet, here we have this new explanation in which nuclear weapons are out of the picture. In fact, you know what else is out of the picture? We also heard a thing about Iran is so cruel to the Iranian people, killing their own protesters. That's gone. Now we have these new new objectives here, which are completely degrading Iran's military. This basically what all four of those first things are. Although if you read it carefully, and he says destroying Iran's defense industrial base, it sounds kind of like destroying the entire country. You know, just destroy their industrial base, because what isn't defense related? And then, of course, well, actually, I shouldn't say, of course, protecting Israel, of course, but also protecting our Middle Eastern allies, including first and foremost Israel, of course, but also, apparently, we're in this to defend Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait, and others, whatever that is. It wasn't meaning protecting Yemen? I don't think so. But these are what happened to that America First stuff? Is that what we voted for? You voted for shipping American troops overseas, coming back in caskets to protect Bahrain and Kuwait. And then he says he's apparently in this particular post, he's going after the Hormuz Strait. The Hormuz Strait will have to be guarded and policed as necessary by the nations who use it. We don't, not us. We don't. But it shouldn't be necessary once Iran's threat is eradicated. Always this murderous language he uses: eradicated, obliterated, degraded, destroyed. This is an obsession.
Well,
and then, go ahead.
Another point to make about this. Well, a couple of things. One is you mentioned about the nuclear power thing, and that was an excellent observation. Now, Iran signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and
Yes.
Gareth Porter has done a lot of work on this. And Gareth Porter wrote a book called Manufactured Crisis, and talking about how this whole situation has been misrepresented. And one of the things he talks about, and others have written about this, is that the Iranians have a right under the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which they have signed, and which the United States signed, among others, to have a peaceful nuclear program. And as long as they were doing that, then they were to be their rights under that not to be infringed. They were not to be attacked. You see, and that sort of thing. Now, some countries have not signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Israel's one of them. India and Pakistan, I think, are two others. And I thought I heard North Korea was part of it, but got out of it or something like that. Okay, but anyway, they have the right to nuclear power. Now, what's turned out is, over the intervening years and decades, of course, the Israelis have a nuclear program. They haven't signed
and nuclear weapons,
and they have nuclear weapons, many nuclear weapons. Interestingly,
with technology they stole from us.
Right, and so you say, well, wait a minute, wasn't anybody talking about that? Okay, and here's the thing: there were the Symington-Glenn amendments, and people can look this up. Senator Stuart Symington from Missouri, and John Glenn, of course, from Ohio, the astronaut.
Mm-hmm.
And because President Kennedy and others have been very concerned, and I think President Nixon too, about the Israeli nuclear program. So they said no. They got these things through. Initially, they said no U.S. Financial or military aid to any country that has a nuclear program and hasn't signed the NPT, the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Then they said they put in a caveat. Some people said, "Oh, wait a minute, we might want to have a loophole." So they put in a loophole. They said, "Well, if the president issues, if the president issues a waiver, which presidents have done for India and Pakistan, so they have but never for the state of Israel, which is interesting." And Ben Swan and I think it's a fellow named Grant Smith. They say hundreds of billions of dollars have gone illegally to the state of Israel. How do we get our money back? That sort of thing. Well, okay, that seems unlikely. But Iran, on the other hand, wasn't invading other countries. Now, here's another point. Iran was the leader in fighting against ISIS and Al Qaeda, because ISIS and Al Qaeda and the head choppers are from a different branch of Islam, and they see the Iranians and the Shiite. They don't like they don't like that at all. They think
I wouldn't even necessarily blame the Sunnis. I'd say this is like the Wahhabist, Salafist,
yeah, okay.
or frankly, they're really all that Islamic at all. Actually, they just hired guns for the United States and Israel. Some of these people, but that might just be me. I don't know.
Okay, well, but then so then the other point that comes up with this then, which is important, I think, is that for instance, like with Soleimani, he was leading the defense of Aleppo. The famous joke, Gary Johnson.
Yeah.
Well, then the United States got involved heavily in overthrowing the government of Syria, and now we have Al Qaeda running Syria. They had 20 years and all that money spent in Afghanistan and all the lives lost to replace the Taliban with the Taliban. Then we're fighting against Al Qaeda and ISIS, and now our government helped to put Al Qaeda in power in Syria.
I've heard actually Al Jilani's not doing so well in Syria right now. There's apparently some kind of uprisings going on, but who knows? We'll see. I guess time will tell on that.
Yeah, that would be good.
I think so too. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I mean, what's happened in Syria is just complete tragedy. But
right. But and by the way, Trump embraced that guy.
I know, and we've done a number of shows about that. It's absolutely shocking and inexcusable. I mean, if nothing else, for that alone, we should be turning our back on Trump. How dare he embrace a member of Al Qaeda? I can't believe the media. I can't believe any single person who knows that fact and isn't shouting from the rooftops. Al Qaeda was welcomed into the White House. Al Qaeda was welcomed into New York City. Al Qaeda was welcomed into the UN this year. That's an absolute national disgrace. So, I mean, again, I said this before. I'll say it again, though. Like, for years after 9/11, it was never forget, never forget. You would think if there's one thing our country wouldn't forget, it's 9/11. Yet we've forgotten. We've forgotten that Al Qaeda is bad.
Right. And when the attacks on Iran, and including the attack on Soleimani, ISIS and Al Qaeda celebrates that. So this is nonsense. And of course, the famous Sun Tzu thing about if your enemies are divided and fighting themselves, don't get them to join together. Well, that's what the United States policy has done, and it has scratched your head. Why would they be doing this? And yes, there's the thing that Iran and some other and their work fighting against ISIS and Al Qaeda in Syria, and of course they were they're helping Hezbollah in Lebanon, trying to help the Shia people to defend themselves against expansionists, whether it's from the Israelis or from the Wahhabists or from the Turks. And by the way, so not only would some people would say, well, the state of Israel wants to destroy Iran and atomize that country, and people better wake up to the possibility of a neo-Ottoman caliphate, because this could actually promote that too. And so you have this rotten Ilham Aliyev in Azerbaijan and Baku. Well, Trump embraced that guy, and not everybody follows as closely as I do this one particular situation, but if they did, I think they'd be outraged about that. And so this whole thing is wrong, because they're doing things that are harmful, things they have no reason to do, things that wouldn't involve American security at all, except for the fact that American politicians and American officials have gotten the United States involved in these things. Before they had done that, it didn't matter. We didn't have a problem with that part of the world previous to this. And now, evidently we do, and we've seen what some of the bitter fruits of that have been, but it's also led to some horribly inhumane situations, and has other ramifications that for other countries around there that we would not say we would be unfriendly with could be really awful. And so it's a lose-lose on every level.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to try to go quickly through a few more Trump insanity tweets, just because I have other topics I want to talk about with you tonight. But we have to go through at least a couple of these. Here is one where Trump threatens Greenland. If our so-called NATO allies continue the refusal to help with the opening of the Strait of Hormuz, which would be so very easy, quick, and simple, and safe for them to do now that I've largely won the war, I may have to reaffirm our commitment to securing Greenland for our national security. So yeah, help us or we take Greenland. It's literally extortion. Literally extortion. Then we have this one. I'm sure people saw this. Robert Mueller just died. Good, I'm glad he's dead. He can no longer hurt innocent people. And as Carrie Prejean Bowler points out, who was just fired from his Religious Liberty Commission for exercising religious liberty. This is how a person talks when they have a heretical woman pastor spiritually advising him. What a disgrace. That's, what's her name? Paula White, I think she's talking about, the lunatic. Where I walk, God walks, is what she said. And then James Martin, God helps with the disgraceful language coming from a Christian or anyone with a soul. It's just as wrong to celebrate the death of Charlie Kirk as it is to celebrate that of Robert Mueller. Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Amazing that people can't see this for what it is. Here's another one. The U.S. has blown Iran off the map. Yet the New York Times whining about the New York Times, whining about the media. Here's another one. Actually, this is kind of a double whammy. It's got a buyer's remorse post. I've supported Trump since day one, committing massive war crimes. And then, of course, here's the post from Trump. We will obliterate the various power plants, starting with the biggest one first. Again, open declaration of war crimes. And then, of course, there is this one with the death of Iran. Again, he's talking about the entire country and all of its people. That's what he's talking about. This is as in your face, flagrant war criminal brazenness as it gets. And then after Iran, the greatest enemy is the radical left, the highly incompetent Democrat Party. Well, we'll see how incompetent they are at winning elections this year, I hate to say. But that's how that goes. And of course, he reposts this on Truth Social. Third term for Trump as a reward from stolen election. Jesus Christ. Yeah. And then there's also this gibberish about TSA. Apparently ICE is going to be doing TSA's job from now on. Not like they have anything better to do. So figure that out. Anyway, all right. I think that's enough of Trump for now. But I guess the question is now, what's going to happen, Dennis? Because we've seen the stories. They're sending Marines in. 2,500 Marines are on their way. The 82nd Airborne's been mobilized. There's clearly some other mobilizations happening behind the scenes. I've seen a lot of rumors, and I'm sure that just means that that things are going on. But I have to say, I'm no military expert, but I don't think it's very likely that this is going to go very well. Because, well, I'll show you. For those who don't know, let me make this a little bit bigger for you guys here. Let me see if I can make this any bigger. No, that didn't help. What if I do this? Will this make it bigger? No. Oh, wait, hold on. I know what I can do. Will this work? No. Wait. Oh, here, okay, wait, hold on. There we go. We can fill the screen with a picture. That's Iran.
Yep, mountain range.
Yeah. Now, if you're wondering why you don't see any cities on this map here, it's because this is very, very, very zoomed out. You might notice the curvature of planet Earth there. That's how far away we are here. This little pipik here, the Strait of Hormuz, that's 60 miles. 60. 60. This little peninsula here hiding behind Dennis, let me go like that. This little peninsula here, that's Qatar. And that tiny little island to its left, that's Bahrain. This is a gigantic country. I mean, not as big as the US, but still surrounded by mountains. So how are we going to get the Marines into Iran? They can come in through what Trump calls Azerbaijan through here. But the problem is, besides the geopolitics, the problem is the massive mountain range there. They can come in through Iraq or Kuwait. This is Iraq here. Kuwait's like this. But then you got this mountain range here. You could try you could try a beach landing, but the problem is all of the beaches are covered by mountains. They're just sheer cliffs. You could come in through Pakistan or Afghanistan, but then on this side you've got mountains. So, and this little speck here in the Persian Gulf, that's Karg Island. That's where everyone's talking about taking. That's where Mark Levin is like, we can take Karg Island. That's where all these generals on Fox News are saying we can take Karg Island. Lindsey Graham, oh, we can take Karg Island. We could take Iwo Jima. We can take Karg Island. As if we didn't lose thousands of Marines at Iwo Jima. How do you get to this Karg Island, folks? You want to riddle me that? Because I don't see it happening at all. I guess time will tell. But it seems to me like trying to occupy this country that's 4 times the size of Iraq and a lot more mountainous is and also desert in the middle too. Like the hottest part of the world is in Iran. I don't know. It seems a little far-fetched to me.
Are we still bombing Iraq? I saw Scott Horton mentioned we've been bombing Iraq for the most part for the last 35 years. And that, didn't we just have the anniversary of that disaster? Starting the war with Iraq, and now apparently NATO is pulling out, and maybe the U.S. is going to get troops out of there too. Finally, the Iraqi people are.
This is not going well for the U.S. in Iraq either, because we're not, I mean, we're not bombing Iraq. They're bombing the U.S. military base in Iraq is what's been happening, and here is let me see if I can find it here. Hold on, I'm looking around. I've got
I thought we
tabs open here
recently, but they're the Iraqi people are very upset with the situation, what the United States is doing over there.
Yeah, here's the U.S. embassy in Baghdad getting bombed. You see those shots firing up at the incoming missile is the CRAM trying to shoot down the missile, missing. Those little explosions in the sky are the CRAM ammo detonating, because they don't want the ones that missed to land and hit people. But then the shot connects anyway. So there was that. Here is this is Dimona. This is in Israel. Here's this landing.
Whoa. 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 Whoa.
That's in Israel. Here's another shot of the U.S. military base in the Victoria base in Baghdad getting lit up. Here's more in Israel, where their air defense is now gone. They've used it all up. All of the American air defense is gone, and this is what it was like earlier this week. So here's the news from Al Jazeera, which is Qatari, which is not exactly pro-Iranian, although some people probably think it is. Entire NATO mission has withdrawn from Iraq. All the soldiers are shipping out. Polish soldiers arriving home from Iraq. And DD Geopolitics says, remember that today NATO announced it's adjusting its mission in Iraq. Guess that means they're leaving. So, yeah. Doesn't look like things are going great, despite Trump's protestations about the war being won already. It's pretty much over. It's like the negotiations with the Russians. Pretty much 99% we're there. Just not the 1% that stops anything from happening militarily in the region. So
right, and that embassy, by the way, in Baghdad, that like the largest embassy in the world, wasn't it? I mean, that was a huge investment.
Yeah, it was a military base.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think the second biggest embassy was in Bahrain, because that was also a military base, and a huge CIA base too. But
right. But so here's the other thing. Yeah. Getting back to your point. I mean, no, I'm not a military. Certainly wouldn't claim to be a military expert or anything either about that. But everything I'm reading suggests it'd be very bloody and very difficult for that small group of Marines to accomplish what they say they want them to accomplish. I guess time will tell. But excuse me. If they were to do that, I mean, that'd be if they took Karg Island. I mean, they're probably sitting ducks there anyway, right? I mean, so maybe the Iranians blow that up or something. But the whole thing is nonsensical. And if they do atomize Iran and create all this death and destruction over there, I mean, the human death toll is going to be enormous, and it's going to again have ramifications with a lot of these other countries. We see the suffering the Syrian people have gone through, the Iraqi people, and I know Ali is loving this. I'm waiting to see. Some people are waiting to see now. Did the Israelis attack Iran from Azerbaijan, and will the Iranians respond to that? Just to remind anybody who's watching this that may not be familiar with it, but Azerbaijan is a genocidal, ethnic annihilation terror state, and they recently, over the last couple of years, had a couple of wars against the Armenian people of Artsakh, otherwise known as Nagorno-Karabakh, and they cleansed the area through killing and forcing everybody out, and they kidnapped the civilian leaders of that country. They were holding them illicitly in prisons in Baku. Those people should be let free. Aliyev and his regime are continuing a genocidal policy against Armenians that's been going on for a very long time amongst they were the Tartars, by the way, for Wayne State University people might remember that was the name, Tartars, but it got changed to warriors. But even the name Azerbaijan, by the way, that they put for this country, if you look it up on the map, the Soviets and the Turks, and I think even the British were involved in establishing this country, but they grabbed the name Azerbaijan from the Iranian region of Azerbaijan, and the government of Persia or of Iran at that time said, "Hey, you can't do that. That's one of our places." But they just took that name, and there's been a lot of persecution of various ethnicities there. The Armenians, yes, but also the Talish and the Dagestanis and the other groups that are in there. But Aliyev is determined to continue attacking Armenia, take more. So when Trump says, "Oh, I ended that war," I know he mispronounces the names, but he started to say he's ended the Armenian-Azerbaijani.
Albania, which is he means Armenia. He says Albania, Albonia, whatever.
Yeah.
Azerbaijan. He says it like 2 words. I've seen that before.
But it's not true. What he's saying is not true. It's a lie. And unfortunately, the Armenian government, by this Pashinyan guy, they have an awful government. This is very sad what's happening over there.
Yeah.
But the consequences of all these policies, and by the way, I just want to point out that these violations of the law by the United States government and all these interventions over this part of the world and trying to encircle that whole region and saying we're going to take on all these countries, China and Russia and Iran, and some people say, are they threatening Turkey too? But whatever, they've pushed all these countries together in ways that have been harmful for what you think would be the American interest, presumably, if we're to be involved over there, which we shouldn't be anyway. But the other thing is for these other small countries, and again, it's bad. The consequences have been negative, and the bloodshed and the terror visited upon people of all nationalities, all ethnicities, and all religions over there is bad, and so we should be sorry for all of them. But I will speak to my fellow Christians and say the Christian communities of that part of the world that have suffered quite a bit too, and including the first Christian nation of the world, which is Armenia, which is under even greater threat because of all of this, despite the pontification and the crocodile tears of American politicians who on April 24th said, "Oh yeah, the Armenian genocide, that's real bad." Except now Trump, by the way, let me just mention this, Adam.
Yeah, sure.
When J.D. Vance went to Armenia, and he went to, and I can't pronounce it, but it's the Genocide Memorial area.
Yeah, he acknowledged the Armenian genocide on X, and then he deleted the tweet.
And then Pashinyan, the rat, fired the lady that's in charge of that area, who was explaining to him what was going on and about the genocide and what had happened in Shushi and in other areas and genocidal actions by Azerbaijan. He fired that.
So it's like the prime minister of Armenia denies the Armenian genocide?
Actually, he said things like, well, maybe it's like, this is incredible. I mean, you want to find a government to complain about. This guy's done so many things, including there were times where he would have Armenian troops retreat from high ground so Azerbaijan could take it over. He says, "Oh, well, we just want peace." Well,
that's amazing. It's like if the president of the United States was loyal to a foreign country over America. Wait.
So horrible. And some people would like to know just how this guy get in power, and were Soros and the CIA and other groups involved in that? I don't know. He did have a re-election campaign, and astoundingly, the guy was re-elected after they lost the 2020 war. And it's astounding he didn't, at that point, I think, just say, you know what? I mean, you could at least respect the guy if he said after that disaster, if people want to look it up, it's horrifying, but that he might say, I'm doing my best. I guess I'm just not up to the task, so I'm going to resign. Oh, well, that's something. But he managed to stay in power, and then it happened again.
Yeah.
And by the way, there's a video right now of him, a woman who was from there, from Artsakh, a young woman who lost family, including her father and all this sort of thing. And she's talking about, you gave Artsakh away and all that. And he starts pointing his finger and yelling at her and telling her she's ungrateful and all this. And so I guess he issued some sort of an apology because somebody said, this is like the worst possible thing you could do for your election campaign.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's heartbreaking. And by the way, in Armenia, as in Iran, there are beautiful Christian religious sites, as there are in Iran, many Muslim sites. And by the way, in Iran, in Armenia, they do have the Blue Mosque, which is a Persian mosque, not Azerbaijani. If anybody reads the Azerbaijani propaganda talking about it. And then in Shushi, Ruben Vardanyan, who was a very successful philanthropist and businessman, and he had led the restoration of a mosque in Shushi, even though it's a Christian Armenian city, but there were some Muslim people had been there, so they restored the mosque. He gets no credit from that from Aliyev, of course, because Aliyev is a really horrible human being and oppresses his own people horribly too, including the Azerbaijani people. But that's who Trump embraced because Aliyev was Trump, you're really great, and Trump, that guy, he's a nice.
Aliyev is the prime minister or the president of Azerbaijan. Is that right?
Well, he's the president. His wife's the vice president. His father was the president and a former NKVD and KGB colonel.
I'm totally legit, totally democratic.
Right. They have the lowest freedom rankings of any country in that area, and that's saying something. and the corruption there is just incredible. And then you get sport watching by the car racing. I can't think of who it is now, but there's a Formula One car racing goes there, and I think they've had some other stuff
Yeah.
there.
I heard Formula One was canceled in Bahrain this year. Imagine that.
Yeah, I wonder why. Anyway, I wanted to mention all this because these are things that I think people should be aware of when they see all the greater ramifications. And by the way, in Iran, and not just for the Armenian community, but for the indigenous religious minority communities, other than the Baha'i, apparently.
By the way, I put the map back up just so people can see. This little area here, that's Azerbaijan. And this little area here is like Armenia. They're not that big compared to Iran. Like not even, I mean, Iran is like an 800-pound gorilla in this region compared to these other places.
Right.
And they think they're just gonna they're gonna use the military of Azerbaijan to fight the Iranians. I mean, it's just insane.
Right. Though Azerbaijan's they've got a lot of good equipment. Now they work with the Israelis apparently, and they bought stuff from Russia and from other countries too. So it's a real tangled web. But it's possible.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you know, the Russia-Ukraine war, Russia's to get to the front lines, Russia just has to cross their own border. That's all they have to do. It's right there. Then I mean, yeah, all the military equipment that Azerbaijan has is from the United States and Israel, which means it's all from the United States. And the Iranians they've been targeting. They're targeting the stuff we can't replace. Like the air defense radars are a huge target because they know we can't replace them. We've gone through all of our. I mean, we still have a bazillion, dumb bombs, but we don't have. We're running low on standoff weapons. We're running low on the precision weapons, the JASSMs missiles, the THAAD missiles, even the Patriots. We've been going through tons of them.
Somebody said, I read this somewhere, that they said we've already gone through 1,100 of them.
Yeah, and I'm not to diminish from the horror of what they're doing to people in Tehran and the Iranian cities, but again, the reason I put this map up is like, look at how big this is, and they're like the talk right now. Trump's like, I'm going to knock out the biggest power plant in Iran. Okay, imagine a foreign country bombs the crap out of Washington D.C. and knocks out a power plant or two. I mean, we'll be furious, but the country won't be destroyed, because we're a huge country. Iran's a huge country. You destroy a power plant or three, there's 90 million people that live in this country. Like they said, I think the biggest power plant they said provides power to 3% of the country. And by the way, you think the Iranian military has never thought of that that they might attack their power plant? Yeah, right.
Right. So they say they power plants in other countries that are much more important. But also, Adam, is there any chance this could lead to blowback? Is that thing the CIA used to talk about, blowback? What's that all about?
Yeah, well, when people get, when you bomb someone's country, people get mad and sometimes they retaliate. And also, by the way, it's not like Iran has no friends. They have, Russia and China are already helping out. There have been stories kind of floating around the internet. They're very quiet about it, but Russia is providing intelligence. We know that for sure. Now, I'll tell you, because we haven't seen much coming from China. But if I was China, and your concern is that if they attack Iran and they succeed, the next thing they're going to do is come for China, because like in all of our military papers, that's what we've said we're going to do. We're going to weaken China. We're going to surround China. We're going to cut off China. Now, if I was China, you wouldn't be able to support them militarily very much, but what China could do for Iran is give them a lot of money. That would be a problem. What would we do about that? Maybe there's a reason why Iran's collecting its Strait of Hormuz tolls in Chinese yuan. Just maybe. Might be something to that. I don't know. Just saying. You think if Iran, so far, Iran seems to be doing well, is what they seem to be thinking. And if you see what the Iranians are saying, like what their officials are saying on X, they sound more confident than Trump does. I mean, they really do.
Well, if they can, I guess, absorb the punishment and their people are rallying around their government, which is what people normally would do in a situation like that, right? That's human nature.
Yeah.
Maybe they just figure, what I've read is they may be getting some help. Some people say they think from the Chinese for, maybe not just the Chinese, but from the Chinese, maybe satellite and targeting.
Satellite, yeah, I've heard about that, yeah. Because they're just posting it open source, pretty much. They're just posting on the internet because they've got satellite images for everywhere. Hey, I just realized this. We've been going a very long time. It's almost 9:30 already. I don't know how much longer you want to stay on, But at least before we go, I want to at least start talking about this Joe Kent business, because that has been a huge story this week. First of all, just because historic, like I can't think of any time a senior White House official. I mean, and don't get me wrong, Joe Kent was confirmed by the U.S. Senate. He is not a minor part of the administration, or was not. His resignation was big, and what he said was remarkable. So here we have his resignation letter. Let me put up on the screen here. Let me see if I can make this full screen. Hold on. Here we go. President, this is what Joe Kent authored on the occasion of his resignation. After much reflection, I've decided to resign from my position as director of the National Counterterrorism Center, effective today. I cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war in Iran. Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation, and it's clear we started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby. Wow. That is an incredible thing for any government official to admit under any circumstances. And then he says, again, I'm going to skip past this Qasem Soleimani part for now. I'm going to come back to that later. But he says very clearly, and again, as a veteran who deployed to combat 11 times, as a gold terrorism who lost my beloved wife in a war manufactured by Israel, interestingly, because his wife died in Syria. So he's implying that war was lobbied for by Israel as well, not just Iraq or Iran. And he says, I cannot support the next generation off to fight and die in a war that serves no benefit to the American people, nor justifies the cost of American lives. That's incredible. I don't know. What is your take on this, Dennis?
Well, it's very interesting, and I think he's on the right track in many ways. Though I will point out, and now Sheldon Richman, who is very knowledgeable about these things,
yeah,
and has written, I think, in ways that shows he is cognizant of what happened to the Palestinian people, and is not obviously not a part of the foreign policy establishment. And Sheldon has been very critical of Netanyahu and other Israeli leaders in the whole situation over there like that. But he is concerned that Joe Kent's letter and what some of the other officials are saying, or not officials, but other people who are commenting on this, maybe are putting too much of an emphasis on Israeli pressure or pro-Israeli lobbying, and not enough on the agency of American officials like Donald Trump. And he says, well, this is on Trump, not. So, but maybe one could say we don't want to split hairs here, but there clearly was a lot of pressure from pro-Israeli quarters, including the government of Israel itself. And by the way, people might want to go and watch as a for instance Netanyahu's testimony to the Congress before the second Iraq war, where he personally guaranteed, he talked about the countries he wanted to see taken out. And he mentioned Iran too, I think, in this, but he talked about in Iraq that they had all these weapons of mass destruction, and he had no doubt, he personally guaranteed that if the United States were to depose Saddam Hussein, there would be enormous positive reverberations throughout the region. That's as close as I can quoting it. It's at least a good paraphrase. And you could say there's a guarantee. Well, where positive reverberations for whom? ISIS, maybe Al Qaeda, but this was a disaster. He's never been held accountable for that. But
well, and to your point about what Sheldon Richman's criticism was, and here it is, by the way, in this paragraph, he says, early in this administration, high-ranking Israeli officials and influential members of the American media deployed a misinformation campaign that wholly undermined your America First platform and sowed pro-war sentiments to encourage war with Iran. This echo chamber was used to deceive you into believing that Iran posed an imminent threat to the United States, and that should you strike now, there was a clear path to swift victory. This was a lie, and is the same tactic the Israelis used to draw us into the disastrous Iraq war. Anyway, so to your point, well, Sheldon Richman's point, and actually Sagar and Jetty, who also interviewed Joe Kent this week, asked Joe Kent about that similar point. He says, don't you think you're putting too much of the blame for this on Israel, when Trump himself was, he seemed quite enthusiastic about doing this, right? Or something to that effect. And what Joe Kent's response to that was, he says, look, I'm not here to assign blame. You guys can all do that. I'm trying to just stop this war. And I think from that perspective, what and you could tell if you haven't seen Joe Kent's interviews, and you should. In fact, I would say his interview with Sagar and Jetty was the best on Breaking Points, which they're on the internet. By the way, speaking of that, just real quick, as a short aside, but I saw someone on X said, "What a world we live in, where someone can resign from the United States cabinet and immediately start doing the podcast circuit." And it's like, as opposed to what? Resigning and being forced into silence. The whole point is to tell your story. The shameful thing is the U.S. mass media won't pick up the story. But anyway, the point being, you could see from these interviews that Joe Kent clearly is trying desperately to persuade Trump to change course. Now, I think his hope is misplaced because, as you say, I think Trump is he is obsessed with this. He hates Iran personally. And what Joe Kent is doing is trying desperately to make one last attempt to stop this calamity from happening. Although, I do think it is far too late. But I think what Joe Kent's point was, because he didn't directly answer that allegation head on, because the answer clearly, of course, is Trump is as much to blame as anybody is in this. But his point being, that's not my job. Like, if people want to assign blame to Trump for this, fine, but I'm just trying to get Trump to change course. And like I said, I don't think he's going to, but
Right. Well,
but what I think Joe Kent has done, even though I think he will fail to get Trump to change course, is that he has absolutely put front and center in a way that even with the media blackout, people have trouble now ignoring the fact that really our foreign policy is driven by Israel in a very dangerous way that has to be addressed. And I think what he's done is a huge service in that regard.
Right. Well, I think Glenn Greenwald, I think I've got this right, that it was Greenwald that brought this up. He was pointing out how the former Never Trumpers have now embraced Trump, and Trump's embraced them. Right. And he said, and the issue that unites all these people is just this advocacy on behalf of the state of Israel and of Israeli expansionism and supremacy over other people over there. So there is that. And people will point to, of course, Mary Madelson in all of her campaign contributions. And Max Blumenthal says MAGA stands for Mary Madelson's goals achieved. That's right.
I like that. That's great.
So, so it's not an either or situation, but so we need to. So I guess that's what I go back again to Washington's farewell address and why it was so important, the principles that he enunciated there. Because if we followed that, then this wouldn't be an issue. And the whole political system in general, it's become a matter of life and death, both for people here and people overseas.
Yeah.
We really had the kind of system that we were told we were going to have, and that was ratified. The person who's the president of the United States wouldn't be nearly as important as it seems to be now. And you wouldn't have this giant Leviathan state that could then be co-opted or taken over and then used for these nefarious purposes. So then I think gets back to the whole idea of what do we do about this? What's to be done? And there are political things to be done, but maybe not in the way that we typically hear them. So I think that the state nullification type things and the local and state activities to because going to the feds to tell the feds to rein themselves in doesn't seem like that has much of a chance of success most of the time. And you can see what happens when there's one person at the federal level like Tom Massey, and previously him, of course, Ron Paul, and there've been a couple others, but Massey is really the target of a huge outcry from people who, by the way,
are all Israel firsters.
Right. So there's that. But the local and state level, maybe there are things that we can do that can at least restore things to a more proper situation where they can't co-opt our government and have it do things for one small group of people, relatively speaking, at everybody else's expense. And if that doesn't work, maybe there's I don't know, but that's all I can come up with right now. And I think the Defend the Guard movement, the Sound Money movement, is a great thing for that. And there are other things too, and we need to do more to fight against the surveillance state too at the local and state levels. And people need to be vigilant for all of this, I believe.
Well, since you brought that up, and I don't want to leave the topic of Joe Kent altogether, we'll come back to it. But since you mentioned the state and local stuff, I do have to go to one of our stories for this week, which is in the state Senate. Senate Bill 502 just passed the Senate on a 35-0 vote, which means every single Republican voted with all of the Democrats, who, of course, were the sponsors of the bill. Two of the biggest nutcase Democrats in the Senate, Sue Schenck and Rosemary Bayer. people who are completely embarrassing, put in a bill to modify the definition of making a terrorist threat. Huh. What might this bill contain that would lead Republicans to think it's okay? Because I sort of remember this big case we spent months and months, if not years, covering, which was that poor college student in Michigan, Lucas Gerhardt, who was facing a 20-year felony for the crime of making a joke about his gun that a campus commie reported him for and accused him of making a terror threat. We've been through this whole story where the guy made a joke about his rifle saying this ought to melt some snowflakes, huh? And he was facing a 20-year felony terrorism charge. What bill do you imagine the Michigan Senate Democrats, including, by the way, the Michigan Republican Party Chairman Jim Runstead, voted for? Well, here's the bill as passed by the Senate, and here's what it does. A person is guilty of making a terrorist threat or of making a false report of terrorism if the person does either, scratch that, any of the following, because we're adding a new thing that can qualify as a 20-year felony. What might that speech crime be? Threatening to commit an act of terrorism. Well, that sounds kind of like a circular definition. What's a threat of terrorism? Threatening to commit an act of terrorism. And communicating that threat with reckless disregard of a substantial risk that the communication would be viewed as threatening violence. You got that? So not a clear objective standard that you're actually threatening violence, not even the standard that someone thinks you're threatening violence, but no, just a substantial risk that someone might view what you said as threatening violence. So Lucas Gerhardt says, this ought to melt some snowflakes. Say, you didn't think that a left-wing lunatic would take that as a threat? 20 years in prison for you. That's what this bill says. And every Republican in the Michigan Senate just voted for it. Now, why might that be? Well, here is what the Senate Fiscal Agency said this bill would do. This is probably all these guys even read before they voted yes for it. The brief rationale. According to testimony, the U.S. Supreme Court's 2023 ruling in Counterman versus Colorado changed the standard for proving a true threat. Okay, first of all, again, we never need to codify court rulings because remember, the U.S. Supreme Court codified the right to abortion. And that did not mean Michigan was under any obligation to change our prohibition against abortion for the 50 plus years that the Supreme Court decision stood. 40 plus years. Generally, the standard shifted from an objective one, a reasonable one, based on a reasonable person's understanding of the threat to a subjective standard based on the accused. Now, again, I don't know this case. You don't know this case. I didn't look the case up, by the way. Doesn't really matter. Probably the facts of this case are totally different from what this actually says, because this is a fiscal agency. This is not a civil rights attorney that wrote this brief, by the way. The Michigan Court of Appeals relied in its decision on a ruling in People v. Kvasnica in which the defendant was charged with making a threat of terrorism. The court specified that there's no statutory language suggesting the prosecutor must prove the defendant consciously disregarded a substantial risk, so this communication be viewed as threatening. Okay, so the problem, according to the court, is that the language wasn't strong enough in saying what the prosecutor has to do. So according to the court, the problem was that the threshold for what's a threat of terrorism is too low. And yet somehow this bill makes the standard lower. How does that work? So they claim that they're just codifying this court case, which again, even if true, by the way, why are we codifying what the left-wing Michigan Supreme Court says? According to the language that was come up with from Rosemary Bayer, who, by the way, represents the district where Lucas Gerhardt lives. Wait, no, she does. Maybe she does. I don't know about after the redistricting. She might not. But he's in Oakland Township. She's in Oxford. Not far. Not far at all. Actually, she might be in Bloomfield now. I don't know. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is every Republican just voted for a Democrat bill on terror threat speech. That's where we are in Michigan right now. Anyway, sorry for that aside, guys, but I guess we do have to keep some nexus to Michigan since our stream's called the Rescue Michigan stream. So there you go. That's That's the speech standards we're currently threatened with, unless the House Republicans stop it, which I'm going to make a point of trying to have them do. All right, before we get back to the main topics at hand, because I do also have some chats on Rumble to comment on. MIHV7 says Wahhabism is sponsored by Saudi Arabia at the request of the West. Yeah, pretty much. I think so. I think we were saying that too. War crimes, the person says, also says that the narrowest point in the Strait of Hormuz is approximately 21 miles. Well, let's see here. Now that I've been challenged on that, I suppose I need to look it up. So let's look at the old Google Maps here, and let's go over to the Strait of Hormuz. And here we have the strait, and you can kind of see in the bottom right corner of my screen there that little what do you call it? The scale. You see it says, what does that say? 20 miles is about the width of my thumb, and that looks like about twice that much at the narrowest, maybe? I don't know. Maybe. Anyway, it's wide. It's wide. It's not easy. It's the point is Iran's a big place. That's all the point we're trying to make. So anyway, all right. What were we talking about again, Dennis? Oh, Joe Kent. That's right.
Yeah.
So I've got another thing I wanted to pull up, which is from John Kiriakou. For those who don't know who John Kiriakou is, he was the CIA whistleblower who blew the whistle on the CIA's torture program and was himself convicted on trumped up charges and thrown into prison for a while. He's a free man now. And he went and had this to say about Joe Kent. He says, when I exposed the CIA torture program, the government prosecuted me, sent me to federal prison, hoped to disappear when I got out. That's how it usually works for whistleblowers. Daniel Ellsberg once told me that most whistleblowers are financially ruined and never recover. He died broke after changing the course of American history, but I refuse to let that be my story. I got out of prison and determined to rebuild my life, and now something unexpected is happening. Millions of people are hearing my story. The truth is a funny way of surviving. So yeah, that's John Kiriakou, who you should follow on the social media channels if I might recommend him. He's a guest on a lot of the really cool programs too.
Somebody said, maybe he said, but I've heard I think there's others that said the CIA, they claimed at one time regarding the torture program, he exposed it. The only person who suffered legal consequence from that torture
was
program,
him.
Yeah.
Was himself. Yeah. It's amazing. Here, I've also got another clip for you. This is a funny one just because, well, it's not funny. It's terrible. But Max Blumenthal made the point. Good to see a video illustration of the key points Joe Kent made in his resignation letter. And here, of course, any of you guys have seen this video, is Mike Huckabee, who allegedly is our ambassador to Israel, although as best I can tell, he serves the nation of Israel, not the nation of the United States of America. And he and Netanyahu are having a laugh about the list of people that they are trying to murder. And Huckabee says, yeah, glad to see my name's not on that list. Yeah. So there you go. But anyway, there's that. So it's amazing times.
It is many horrible things happening. I guess the other thing is you say, well, there's great opportunity, right, for us to try to, but the events and the ramifications of this on so many levels, political, psychological, ethical, financial, and physical security and safety. There are many negative ramifications, and of course, our liberty is being eroded every day. So more and more, as we approach this 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, the government that rules over us, it's not supposed to rule us, but the government that we're under right now is the largest government in the history of the world. And Americans now suffer under a government that is more intrusive and has more abuses than the government from which the 13 free and independent states seceded in 1776.
Yeah. What do you think about Tulsi, Dennis? You saw with that clip in the cold open, but what do you think about her?
Extremely disappointing. And she was very forthright years ago, and even administration. And so I'm trying to figure out why she did this. I don't know. I mean, yeah,
well, I mean, there's a rule in Washington and in general, you have to protect your boss, you know. And I will point out, I mean, obviously we saw that clip at the beginning. She's clearly stonewalling, and so John Ossoff, who, by the way, I remember when he was running for Senate and hadn't gotten in yet. I remember thinking like he's a radical lunatic. But in that clip, you wouldn't get that. He's just tearing it to pieces because he's pointing out, you just can't say what even your report says, which is that you say that Iran was not a nuclear threat, and yet Trump said it was. And he knew he had her pinned, and so what she was just doing is just stonewalling, just saying, well, the president ultimately decides. I was like, yeah, but that's not the point. The point is that you're the one that makes the recommendation. He doesn't have intelligence of his own, and that's not a diss on Trump. The president is not an intelligence expert. He relies on you to do that job.
Right.
But anyway, the point being, though, you know what she didn't say? She didn't say, oh, no, Senator, that's not true. We absolutely think Iran was a nuclear threat. Like, she didn't really protect him. If anything, she refused to protect him. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if she leaves in time. Not right. I mean, maybe, and you might understand, she wouldn't resign with Joe Kent at the same time because you don't want to have that being the news cycle. Like if she resigned at the same time as Joe Kent, no one would be talking about Joe Kent right now. So maybe there's that, but it's hard to say. I think it's very hard to say.
Right. And that's an interesting point. I mean, she's got a lot of criticism for not being forthright there. But as you say, she may have felt the best thing to do was to stonewall. And then if she sees there's no hope, then she resigns at a different time. And now you have two news stories about this rather than just the one. And that might be more effective.
Yeah. And maybe, I mean, there's always the notion that maybe at some point I can make a difference. I mean, the fact is, clearly, Trump even said some months ago after, I think, the first attack on Iran, he said, I don't listen to Tulsi. But he basically just said, which is pathetic for her. It's very embarrassing, but maybe because it's true. Once you leave the arena, you're out. You're a nobody again. I walked away from a job on the Hill because, I was in a situation where, well, and it's a long story, but you guys who know, I worked for Kerry Bentivolio, who indeed did not last much longer than me in Washington. But the point is, you have to weigh the fact of, I might be working for the lowest congressman, but I'm still on the Hill. I can still do something. I didn't really do anything, but my claim to fame when I worked for Bentivolio was this exposing the Obamacare website, which ultimately led to nothing. And that's the way I think a lot of it goes. But, there is a cost to leaving. And you realize if I'm leaving, my voice is gone. And there won't be that. Right now, even though he's not listening to it, at least she has a voice. But I don't know. She's probably leaving soon is what I think.
Well, you will be right about that. I think the counter to the argument for staying and that you lose your voice when you leave, maybe, and you brought it up earlier about Joe Kent going on doing the podcast circuit and that sort of thing. So maybe you can look at this and say, well, while you're in the administration, you're constrained in what you can say about these sorts of things. When you come out, you can at least maybe add one's voice and to provide some outside pressure. And maybe that would be the idea there.
Yeah. Well, I guess time will tell. It's not going to matter. Is what I think, to tell you the truth. I think Trump has, he's in, it's called a zugzwang in chess. There's no good move that you can make. There's nothing you can do. Like, my advice to Trump now, I guess, would be to just get out of Iran right now, call it a win. And that's what Joe Kent is saying. Just leave, call it a win. Just leave and call it a win. The problem is, Iran's not ready to let you leave with that and again call it a win. And it's like, okay, if you just leave and try to pretend this never happened, well, okay, but missiles are still going to rain down on Israel, which in my opinion, fuck them. But that's not what Trump's going to think. That's not what the Israel lobby is going to think. The Middle East is cooked. All of our military bases are gone from these Middle Eastern countries, which again, fine by me, but hugely embarrassing for Trump. There's no way that wouldn't be spun as a huge loss. It'll make the entire excursion, as Trump calls it, in Iran look like a complete colossal backfire. There's politically no smart answer. There's no pretending. Like, that's what Trump keeps trying to do. He keeps trying to say, oh, we've almost won. It's fine. Everything will be great. Just finishing off a few things and we'll just come home and everything will be good. It's like, no, dude, you haven't. Iran is going to be patrolling and extracting their toll from the Strait of Hormuz from now on. And if their condition of oil going through it is trading oil in Chinese yuan instead of in dollars, that's going to hurt us. Like, there's no getting out of this now.
Right. And a couple of the analyses that I read, people were talking about that the Iranians have determined that the history of this is that they want to have some permanent changes, or changes that would appear to be permanent in their favor, that they're going to say, okay, you want to disengage from this. We want to have a reset of this relationship in a way where you acknowledge you're leaving this area, and some people even think they might even ask for reparations.
Yeah, they have. Yep, I saw that.
Right, and they're going to say there's going to be a totally different situation here now, with all the damage that's been done and all the lives lost and all the price they've paid. They figure, some people think that their leaders and their people might be saying, there's no sense just going through this again and again. Let's just say, okay, we're not giving up, and we're gonna keep putting pressure on one way or another until we get changes that they will say, until they get changes that make things palatable for them, where they don't feel that they're under so much threat.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys think Iran's going to just let this go, let me show you a few things. Here's a hospital destroyed in Iran, one of only 3 that provides cell therapy, out of service for at least 6 months. Because we bombed a hospital, or Israel did, but same difference. Here's an Iranian woman, a pharmacist, University of Tehran alumnus, killed in U.S.-Israeli airstrikes on March 9th. At the pharmacy she was working, that's where she was killed. Here's a video. A woman is recording a bombing in a neighborhood in Iran, and there's double tap, so she actually films her own execution. She's filming this carnage right here, and then in a moment or two's time, you'll see. There's audio for this. It's on my X feed if you want to watch it, which you shouldn't, but it's there. People want to see what your tax dollars are paying for. There it is. There's a second bomb. She was killed while she was streaming.
Yeah.
And
we haven't talked about the bombing of Beirut and everything that's going on in Lebanon, right? With the bridges.
Yep. I was just gonna get to that. Yeah, Beirut. This is a translation, but here's these are Israeli officials. Here's what they actually are saying: hundreds of thousands of Shiite residents in southern Lebanon must evacuate their homes. They will not be able to return to them. We will destroy the infrastructure in southern Lebanon, just as we did in Gaza, as in Rafah or Beit Hanun, vast areas that were left in ruins. They're openly saying they're carrying out a genocide in Lebanon. Here's another one. Here's hold on, I'll pull it up here. These are Israelis joking about looting the Lebanese homes they're destroying. So here's them. You see them just destroying a pot of flowers. These 6 psychotic people. Here's what someone points out. This is downtown Beirut, a city of 5,000 years old, and here's what Israel's doing to it, giving it the Gaza treatment. You think they're going to forget this? Think Trump's going to get to walk home from that? I don't think so.
And when Americans of Lebanese descent, of whom I know quite a few.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, right. And when they can say, wait a minute, what about, why are our people second or third or fourth class?
That reminds me, I need to call a friend of mine, make sure his family's okay, because he's got family in Lebanon.
Right. And we have people in our church that have people over there in actually Lebanon and Israel and Syria and Iran and all these other places. So this whole thing is terrible. And we're looking at Beirut now, and then what they're doing to South Lebanon, into the bridges, cutting those people off. And then, of course, we can go back to talk about Gaza and the West Bank, where there was never Hamas, by the way, right? This is really just awful. And the U.S.
they're attacking the West Bank right now, I think.
Yeah. No.
Well, apparently that one Iranian official that they were so proud of murdering last week, apparently what they did was they just bombed his entire building and murdered like 100 people at once. Is what happened here, including his daughter. So yeah, it's just incredible. When you compare the war between Russia and Ukraine, and how how few civilians Russia has actually killed compared to when the United States and Israel kill them intentionally, because the idea is to inflict so much terror that will cause an uprising. If what they think is going to happen, it's not, but that's what they think is going to do.
Speaking of state terrorism,
In fact, someone actually just posted this. There was a sorry, Nance, I did not mean to interrupt, but I saw this. I have to share this one. Someone posted about Kharkov. This is Kharkov, 15 kilometers from the front line. It's one of the most alive cities I know. And this person posted, "Should thank God Russia isn't Israel." Yeah.
So it's an extremely sad time for many people of many different ethnicities, faiths, religions, and all those sorts of things. And one of the threads that runs between this, with all these things, unfortunately, is the role played by United States government officials and their patrons, and they're able to do that because they've been able to have so much usurpation of power, which, going back to St. George Tucker, what he said in 1803, it's a treason against the sovereignty of the people. So we've lost our sovereignty, and things are being done that are harmful, either directly or indirectly to us, but harmful to others, and totally against the supreme law of the land and natural law and everything else, and the principles of the American Revolution. And so, as Ron Paul says, people are concerned, rightly so, about financial bankruptcy and other things, but that's all following moral bankruptcy, and the moral bankruptcy seems to be rearing its head here in ways that are impossible to miss.
Yeah. And not even just the Middle East, by the way. Here's this is from Cuba, where apparently we're also blockading and trying to starve the people into submission. This person posts, "A friend in Cuba just notified me that every single patient in that hospital that was on ventilators died tonight," where we have starved the people of Cuba of oil, and they are out of electricity. And they brag about this. Trump and Rubio brag about the terror they're inflicting on Cuba and the murders they're committing. And it's truly appalling. And I don't know what the hell is wrong with Republicans, that this is not what they voted for, and yet some people are going along with this. And according to them, a majority of them are going along with it. I find it disgraceful.
Right, and there's the blowing up of these boats, where the allegation, they're drug runners. Well, we don't know that, but even if they were, that's not the law to just execute them in open waters like that. And even that, so this gets back to another point when you bring a thing up about the terrorism and the subjectivity of some of these words. And so there have been all sorts of heinous things done, excused by using Orwellian language or following Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals of isolating the target and using language like, "Oh, that person's a terrorist," or "that person's a drug runner," or something like that. And therefore, whatever we do is permissible. And that's not the way a rule of law would work in any sort of civilized society, with constraints on those who have the responsibility to adjudicate.
Yeah. I was thinking, I saw this interview with the foreign minister of Iran this week, and he's being interviewed, and he says, "I do not understand why Americans don't understand," because this is talking about the killing of Larijani, who was the chief of the Security Council, and he's like, "Look, this is not going to stop us from fighting this war. We're not going to capitulate because you assassinated one guy." He says, I don't understand why you haven't gotten this. "We have a strong political structure with established political, economic, and social institutions. The presence or absence of a single individual does not affect the structure. We have not had anyone more important than the leader himself. And even when the leader was martyred, the system continued to work and immediately provided a replacement. If anybody else is martyred, it'll be the same." And, my thought on that is, there's a reason why we don't understand this. And the reason is because we're satanic. We're evil, monstrous people. Not we, the American people. I'm talking about our leaders. I'm talking about the administration, the Israelis. They say they're Jewish. They're not. Zionism is something else. There's a lot. There are Jews who say we're actually biblically forbidden from having a homeland. We're meant to be diaspora. But Zionism is we're the chosen people, and its Christian Zionist affiliate is, as they often are so happy to say, God blesses those who bless the Jews, and therefore the Israelis. And this is what Ted Cruz argues. This is what all these Christian Zionists argue, is essentially tribalism. They're the chosen people. They're better. It's the exact opposite of, what Christ taught, was like, I'm the temple and salvation is for everybody. The reason why we think we could just assassinate their leader and they'll all fall into line is because we're projecting. That's us. That's what Trump thinks. If I'm assassinated, what would America do without me? Like, what would we do without our great gods who run our government? Like, that's our mentality. That's the mentality of Benjamin Netanyahu. They don't understand martyrdom. They don't understand dying for a cause, and that Iranians welcome it. That they're like, and in fact, I've seen interviews with Iranians who say, you know what? Look what they did to Iraq. Look what they did to Afghanistan. If my family's to suffer to be free, so be it. That's what the price we pay. Trump couldn't understand that. He couldn't understand sacrifice. He's all about himself. He's obsessed with himself. That's what they are. They worship themselves, which is what Satanism is. Worship of the self. Read the Satanic Bible. Anton LaVey will tell you. He says, what's the most important holiday in Satanism? Your birthday. That's the way they think. That's the way they operate. That's who they actually are. They wear their religion as a skin, but it's not what they really believe. They believe in themselves. And sometimes they get caught worshiping Molech and Baal and the rest of them. That's what that Epstein stuff is all about. And the world knows it. The world knows it. That's what they see us as. They see us as a country that protects child molesters and child killers and child rapists, because we are.
There's an interesting Twitter X site, Anarcho-Christian, that shares a lot of resources on this very important theological idea that I guess the silver lining with what's been going on these days is that many people are revisiting this and, biblical precepts and concepts and that sort of thing, including when we say Israel, who is that? And as they will point out in quoting many verses, some from the Old Testament, but many from the New Testament, Paul and others writing about this, is that it's not a geopolitical ethno-state. So people have misidentified actual biblical Israel. Now, of course, there's a dispute about this. People have different viewpoints on it. I happen to agree with what anarcho-Christian people are saying about this. But I think the other point, from an American governance standpoint, is the U.S. government apparently has taken the other position. Ambassador Huckabee is not alone in that, right? As you say, well, who does he really represent? But among other things, isn't this a violation of the First Amendment about the establishment of religion clause, because they're taking a side in this theological dispute? It has many ramifications, but maybe the good news is there are a lot of people that are going back and rereading scripture and thinking about this and what was really said to Abraham, and then Christ, Jesus Christ, is the fulfillment of all this, and the fact that it's the followers, the royal priesthood, the followers of Christ, who are actually Israel according to the New Testament, and so that's what we should be focusing on in this. And it's not a geopolitical ethno-state, and never really was. And yes, there are people of the Jewish faith who say, well, it was never supposed to be like that either, for different reasons. So it's quite intriguing, and it's an interesting area of study for a number of reasons.
Right on. Well, hey man, I have more topics. I think we should probably call it a night though, because we've been going for more than 2 hours, and I think this is a long stream by any means. And I think I need to stream more frequently, because I remember thinking, like, after Sunday stream last week, I was like, I should probably do a midweek stream because there's so much news, and I didn't. And there's just been more and more and more news. We didn't get to talking about Rand Paul, because maybe we should talk about that real quick before we go, because he oversaw the hearing of confirmation from Markwayne Mullin, the quisling Israel firster who is now being tapped to replace Kristi Noem at DHS. And he and Rand called Markwayne Mullin out on siding with the leftist lunatic that attacked Rand Paul and nearly killed him. And Rand asked him at this hearing about this, and he refused to even apologize. It's just mind-boggling to me. I guess we'll have to see if he gets confirmed. I know Rand said he's a hard no, and I assume the Democrats all will be, but my God.
Well, it went through the committee, right? Because Fetterman voted for him.
Yeah, well, just committee. That's gonna go to the full Senate. We'll see what they do.
But I think another key point to make here is Senator Paul brought up that and a couple of other aspects of things that Markwayne Mullin has done. And it was disingenuously reported by establishmentarians that this was Rand Paul making it all about himself. And that, of course, is not what he was doing. And I think people that think about this clearly would say, you have to wonder about the character of a person that would say what Markwayne Mullin had said about that horrific situation, and that he wouldn't take that opportunity to say, well, Senator, I'm sorry if it looked like I was saying that, but let me just state for the record, no, I don't think that was right, that what happened to you. And, you know,
yeah. I mean, besides, so what if he makes it about himself? Yeah, hey, by the way, since you were happy that I was almost murdered, now you want my vote for you, and here I am in the chair. I might want to bring that up. What's wrong with that? Also, by the way, real quick, but you're right, there were other things too, including this. Markwayne Mullin voted against cutting welfare for non-citizens. Not years ago, by the way. That was his vote this month. So that was this. And Ann Coulter actually nailed it with this exchange. Yeah, with Markwayne Mullin in his ridiculous banter with Rand Paul, bring up that he said dueling in Congress is legal, and Rand's like, no, it isn't. What are you talking about? There's that exchange of lunacy. And then also, of course, I think I mentioned this last week. Markwayne Mullin's crying and wanting to have buying a beer for the Capitol Police officer that murdered Ashley Babbitt. Too. What is Trump thinking? Well, I guess they're not thinking, but you know.
Right. You might have thought after the disaster of Kristi Noem, who couldn't explain habeas corpus when asked in congressional testimony, she was supposed to be the head of the Department of Homeland Security, which is not constitutionally mandated, so the whole thing should just be abolished because it's an attack on our Constitution. But anyway, he couldn't have found a worse nominee, and he said, "Hold my beer." And he
no kidding. That's how that goes. Only the second most important, nomination, but whatever. Oh, by the way, also, I just real quick. So this might be the last time we talk about Joe Kent on this show, because I have a feeling after this, he's yesterday's news. But there's another thing Trump did, trying to sully the good name of Joe Kent, because they're also looking into investigating him now, of course. But they tried to throw this in as an own, where Joe Kent says on X, we should not sit and wait for the next attack, wipe Iran's ballistic missile capability out and get our troops out of Iraq. They are only targets now. No U.S. wounded in action or killed in action is a tribute to the professionalism of our military and intel, not Iran restraint. And this is Trump, I would say, look, see, Joe Kent supported attacking Iran is what he's trying to claim, to which Mel, who's awesome on X, pointed out.
Yeah, Mel.
Says, Joe Kent posted this on January 8th, 2020, immediately after Iran retaliated for the killing of General Soleimani, the first of what expected to be multiple waves of strikes on U.S. bases. Ultimately, those subsequent waves of attack did not come because hours later, Iran shot down a Ukrainian airliner after takeoff, mistaking it for a U.S. retaliation missile. It killed 176 people, including 84 Iranians. Hugely embarrassing for Iran. Kent's message here is perfectly consistent with his resignation statement because there was an imminent threat to our troops in the region on that date that he made that post. No such threat existed on February 28th. And please bring the lecture. I probably shouldn't be there to agree with. Obviously, I agree, but yada yada yada. Anyway, so that's the thing about that little Joe Kent story there. So I don't know. Apparently, they're trying to investigate him for leaks. I think it's all just complete BS. They're trying to sully his name. It's not going to work. So it is what it is.
Let's hope it doesn't. No, I agree. He deserves a lot of credit, obviously.
Yeah. All right, guys. I think we should call it stream. Dennis, you are a busy man. Do you have any events we should know about or things coming up you want to promote? Because you are certainly welcome to do so. Otherwise, I'll just say thank you for joining me.
Oh, well, it's very kind of you to invite me. We do have a Republican state convention coming up.
Oh, yes.
Over there in Novi, so I'll be at that. You know,
the 28th. I will not be there personally, but maybe I'll go just to hang out with people. I probably won't, though.
Okay.
I could have been a delegate easily. Our county did not even fill its delegation to go to state convention, but I don't know. These conventions take hours and hours and hours. They're a ton of time. I don't feel all that strongly about any particular candidate, and frankly, I think they're all going to get wiped out in November anyway. But my 2 cents. But I still, it is a Republican gathering. I guess it's good to be there and see people and keep the faith and all that good stuff. So yes, Sunday the 28th, I believe it is.
Or Saturday.
Saturday the 28th. This Saturday in Novi.
Right.
At the place formerly known as the Suburban Collection Showplace or the Rock Financial Showplace or whatever other name it's had in the past. But now it's something else.
That place. Yep.
Yeah, that place, the big place.
Adam,
Well,
thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for joining me, and thank you for staying on for so long and so late. I appreciate it. We've had a lot of things to talk about tonight, and it's unfortunately still not good news for our state or our country, and that is just the way it's going to go, I guess. You know, it's very sad. I saw there was, in fact, maybe I can find this. There was a thing. I saw a post about Ohio where, unfortunately, it looks like a lockdowner, really lousy Democrat is going to be the Democrats' nominee for governor of Ohio. The Republican is Vivek Ramaswamy. And I think Democrats are going to probably win that one. I suppose to hear more about Michigan, where we're probably going to clobbered here too. That'll be awful.
What about Casey? Casey Pooch, is that his name?
Oh, well, I wish him the best, but we'll see. You know, it's hard. It's very hard to win a statewide race when the establishment's already made their pick, but we'll see. Yeah, I wish Casey Pooch the best, but you know, we'll see what happens. Hey, who knows? You know, I mentioned, you know, Indian names don't tend to go well in Republican primaries, but even still, I think it's a big hurdle to overcome. Anyway, guys, thank you for tuning in. It has been fun. We have a different video for the outro. We have some nice AI. There's been some great AI videos this past week, including someone made a someone in China made this 5-minute long mini movie in AI that was a parable of the Iran war, where China was not China, where the Iranians were Persian cats and the Americans were the Golden Eagle Coalition. Anyway, it was very funny. I'm not going to play that clip for us tonight. Maybe I'll post a link in the description or something. And then there was also this video someone made, which is a big conspiracy video that was really cool. I might put that link in the description too. But we have a funny one for the outro for tonight. So enjoy the Rickroll, and until next time.
Looks like I kind of fucked up. You've seen the polls, and so have I. I got elected on no new wars, and now we'll be lucky if moonstones start to fly. I tried to cover up the Epstein files. Seems as though I'm a file. Always gonna keep you up, always gonna let you down, always gonna stab your back and betray you, always gonna make you sigh, always gonna make you cry, always gonna tell you lies and betray you. I've been president for so long, did all the 6 years out, the swarm's still intriguing, inside we both know what's been going wrong. Israel's got tapes of me diddling children, and if you wanted deportations, I've done less than Obama did. Always gonna keep you in, always gonna let you down, so can you turn around, I'll backstab you, always gonna make you sigh, always gonna make you cry, always gonna tell you lies and betray you, always gonna get you up, always gonna let you down, so can you turn around, I'll backstab you, always gonna make you sigh, always gonna make you cry, always gonna tell you lies and betray you. Bring it every breath, string running. Ooh, you know the kids, always gonna give you up, always gonna let you down, sticking your tail around, I'll make stand you, always gonna make you sigh, always gonna make you cry, always gonna tell you lies.